When I called to ask when the wedding was, she said, "We already got married, Mom. We only invited people who really matter. Just send the beach house keys and stop being so dramatic." I didn't argue. I just smiled, ended the call, and started planning quietly. 3 days later, I left them a wedding gift on their doorstep, one that made her new husband yell for hours. But that phone call wasn't where this story began. To understand how it came to this, we have to go back 2 years earlier, when my daughter Madison first introduced me to Trevor. I'm Carol, 65 years old, and until recently, I thought I knew my daughter better than anyone. We used to talk constantly, every lunch break, every evening, sometimes late into the night. Our chats ranged from office gossip to Netflix binges to her endless dating mishaps. So when Trevor came into her life, I was thrilled. She deserved a man who could truly see her intelligence and her warmth. "Mom, he's different," she told me, glowing. "He really understands me." That night, I made my famous lasagna, the one Madison had loved since she was a child. Trevor arrived in a sharp suit, holding roses, showering me with compliments about my home. He had the polished kind of charm that usually put me on edge, but Madison's joy made me set my doubts aside. Over dinner, he asked polite questions about my nursing career, praised my cooking, and even offered to help with the dishes. On the surface, it was perfect, yet something about his behavior felt a little too rehearsed. Before leaving, he hugged me warmly. "Your mother raised an amazing daughter," he told Madison. "You must be so proud." And I was. Madison had a great career in marketing, owned her condo, and had built a life for herself. She was independent, determined, confident, everything I had raised her to be. Still, a small worry crept in. Maybe it was the way he referred to Madison like she was a prize, or the fact he mentioned my Cape Cod beach house 3 times in one evening. That little place had been in the family for 15 years, where Madison and I had spent every summer together. The next morning, I told my sister Janet, "He seems very interested in our beach house." "That's sweet, Carol," she said. "It means he wants to be part of the family." I wanted to believe that, but his polished smile reminded me of Robert, my ex-husband, Madison's father. He too had that same effortless charm that eventually turned cold. As months passed, Trevor became more controlling. He had opinions about her friends, her job, even her relationship with me. Slowly, our daily calls shrank to weekly, then monthly, until they nearly disappeared. "Trevor thinks I should focus on our relationship," Madison explained gently when I asked why she seemed so distant. "He says couples who last always put each other first." That should have been my red flag, but I told myself she was old enough to make her own choices. If she was happy, I should accept it. Then came the engagement party, the one I wasn't invited to. I learned about her engagement the same way strangers did, through Facebook. A photo of her hand flashing a diamond ring, captioned, "He asked." I said yes. "Can't wait to start forever together." 50-some likes, dozens of comments, everyone congratulating her. No one questioning why her own mother wasn't there, probably assuming I already knew. I stared at the photo until my coffee went cold, stunned that this was how I'd found out. My daughter was engaged, and I had learned about it on social media. I called her immediately. "Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry," Madison said breathlessly. "It just happened last night and we were so caught up in the moment. Trevor surprised me at our favorite restaurant, and then we went back to his place and called his parents. And it got so late and I was going to call you this morning, I swear." "Congratulations, sweetheart," I said, forcing as much warmth into my voice as I could manage. "Tell me everything." And she did. For 20 minutes straight, Madison bubbled with excitement, describing the proposal, the ring, how perfect it all felt, and how Trevor's parents immediately began planning an engagement party at their country club. She told me they were even aiming for a spring wedding. "When's the engagement party?" I asked after she finally took a breath. A pause. Then, "Next Saturday. It's just going to be intimate, only immediate family and a few close friends." "Should I plan to come down Friday night?" I asked, already making mental arrangements. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, about that. Trevor's family has certain traditions for these events. His mother is very traditional and she's organizing everything according to their customs. A heavy, cold feeling settled in my stomach. What does that mean, Madison? It means, well, it's really just for Trevor's family and a couple of our closest friends. It's not that you're not important, Mom. It's just that this is how his family does things, and Trevor thinks it's best to respect that. Trevor thinks. That was becoming the theme of everything. I see, I answered, keeping my tone calm and even. And what do you think? I think Trevor knows his family better than I do, and I want to make a good impression. You understand, right? Don't worry, we'll do something just the three of us soon. That was 6 months ago. We never had that something special. In fact, I'd only seen Trevor twice since then, and both times he was courteous but distant, treating me like some elderly relative to politely endure, rather than the mother who raised Madison single-handedly after her father left us when she was 8. The wedding planning moved forward without me. Madison would mention details in passing, how they'd found a venue, booked a photographer, chosen flowers. But whenever I offered to help or asked questions, the answers were vague. Trevor's handling it, or his mother has connections. 3 months ago, I tried again. Have you chosen a date yet? I need to ask for time off from the library. We're thinking early October, she said. Probably the second weekend. Trevor's researching venues. That sounds beautiful. October in New England is perfect. Are you considering the beach house? I asked, hopeful. Oh no, Mom. Trevor wants something more elegant, more sophisticated than a backyard beach wedding. Her dismissal cut deeper than I expected. Madison had always dreamed of marrying at our beach house, barefoot in the sand, fairy lights strung across the dunes. She'd told me that since she was a child. Of course, I said softly. Whatever makes you happy. But my place in her life was shrinking by the day. I wasn't invited to tour venues. I wasn't consulted on the guest list. I wasn't asked to join the dress shopping trips I later saw splashed all over Instagram, with Madison glowing beside her soon-to-be mother-in-law, who looked every bit the proud parent. I had become a spectator in my own daughter's milestones. The final blow came just 2 weeks ago. I was reorganizing the linen closet, a completely ordinary Tuesday night task, yet one that would burn into my memory forever as the moment everything shifted. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be cool about it, Madison said over the phone. Nothing good ever started with that phrase. I sat down on my bed, bracing myself. What is it, sweetheart? Trevor's been reading about family boundaries and healthy marriages, she began. He thinks it's really important we establish our independence as a couple from the very start. That familiar chill crept over me. What kind of independence? Well, he pointed out that I've leaned on you emotionally most of my life, like calling you whenever I'm stressed instead of dealing with it with my partner. He says that could cause problems between us. Madison, talking to your mother when you're upset isn't unhealthy. It's normal. But is it? Trevor showed me some articles about women who prioritize their mothers over their husbands and how that destroys marriages. I don't want to be that wife, Mom. I closed my eyes, instantly recognizing what was really happening. This wasn't love. This was manipulation. Trevor was cutting Madison off from her support system and convincing her it was for her own good. What does this mean in practice? I asked carefully, though my stomach was already twisting with dread. It means we should set clear boundaries, less constant contact, more space for Trevor and me to build our own traditions together. She paused, then added hesitantly, Trevor thinks it would be healthier if we spent the holidays with his family this year, just to break the old patterns. The holidays. For years, Christmas had been ours. Madison would drive up from Boston on Christmas Eve. We'd stay in pajamas until noon, sipping cocoa, unwrapping presents, laughing like she was still 12. That tradition had carried us through after Robert walked out. and now Trevor wanted it gone. I see. My voice sounded detached, almost like someone else's. Anything else? Actually, yes. Trevor feels the beach house complicates things. My grip on the phone tightened. What about the beach house? Well, I always thought I'd inherit it someday. But Trevor says that puts a lot of pressure on us. He feels like he can never really relax there because it isn't ours. It's yours. And if something ever happened between you and us, we'd lose that vacation spot. Are you asking me to sign it over to you? I asked, my voice sharp. Not exactly. Trevor just thinks it would be better for us to find our own place, a space that belongs entirely to us. He doesn't want to feel judged when we're supposed to be relaxing. Judged by me, the woman who had barely seen him more than twice in the past year. Madison, that house has been in our family for 15 years. It's where you learned to swim, where we created countless memories. I know, Mom, and I cherish those memories, but I'm starting a new family with Trevor. We need to build our own special places. Special places, ones that no longer included me. I ended that call promising I'd think about it and respect their space, but inside, I'd already made a different decision. Not revenge, not yet, but I was going to uncover who Trevor really was and what he truly wanted from my daughter. It didn't take long. Within a week of digging online and speaking to a few of Madison's college friends, Trevor's history unfolded. Madison wasn't his first target. There had been Emma, whose family owned a thriving restaurant chain. She'd been pushed away from her relatives until her father discovered Trevor's massive gambling debts and broke off the engagement. And before Emma, there was Sarah, a woman with a generous trust fund. Trevor had tried to get access to her money, only to be stopped by her protective brothers. Trevor Morrison wasn't just overbearing. He was a calculated predator, preying on successful women with wealthy families. Madison, with her thriving career and the expectation of inheriting my beach house, was simply his latest conquest. That's when I began planning my wedding gift. Then came the call that shifted everything. Just 3 days ago, while I was trimming my roses in the garden, my phone buzzed with Madison's name. For a brief second, my heart leapt with the old reflex of joy before reality pulled me back. "Hi, Mom," she said. Her voice sounded strange, flat, almost mechanical. "Hello, sweetheart. How are you?" I asked, steadying myself. "I'm calling to let you know Trevor and I got married yesterday. It was a small ceremony, just immediate family and our closest friends." I froze. Yesterday? I thought the wedding was supposed to be in October. We decided to keep it simple. Trevor felt a big wedding would be too much pressure, too commercial. We found a lovely venue in Martha's Vineyard and kept it intimate. Intimate. And secret. "Congratulations," I managed to say. I'm sure it was beautiful. It was perfect, really. Trevor's parents were there and his sister flew in from California. My friend Jessica was my maid of honor, and Trevor's best friend Tom was his best man. The photographer got some amazing shots. She recited the details like she was reading from a brochure, not describing what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But what caught my attention most was what she left unsaid. "That sounds lovely, Madison. I'm happy for you," I said gently. "Thanks. Oh, and Mom, Trevor and I were wondering if you could send us the keys to the beach house. We're thinking of spending our honeymoon there since we didn't have time to plan a proper trip." And there it was, the true reason for the call. Not to share her happiness with me, not to include me in her milestone, but to request the keys to the property they already imagined as their own. "The keys to the beach house?" I repeated slowly. "Right. Trevor's really excited to see it. I've told him so much over the years. He's especially curious about the renovations you've done and how much the property's value has gone up." Property value appreciation. How touching. "Madison, when you say you got married yesterday, do you mean you had a ceremony or are you legally married?" "Both. We got the license last week and had the ceremony yesterday. Why?" "Just clarifying. And it never crossed your mind to invite your mother to your wedding?" A long silence. Then, "Mom, Please don't make this dramatic. It was Trevor's choice to keep it small, and honestly, after everything we discussed about boundaries, I thought you'd understand. I understand perfectly, I told her. And I did. I understood that Trevor had convinced my daughter that cutting me out of her wedding was somehow healthy. I understood that he had succeeded in separating her from the one person who might protect her. So you'll send the keys? We're hoping to drive up this Friday. Of course, sweetheart. I'll make sure you get them. After I ended the call, I sat in my garden, staring at the roses, thinking about patterns. Trevor always worked in patterns, isolating women, persuading them to give him access to money or property, then moving on once he got what he wanted or when someone started asking questions. But this time, he had miscalculated. He assumed I was a powerless mother who would quietly accept being erased from my own daughter's life. He didn't realize what happens when you corner a woman and threaten the one thing she treasures most. That very afternoon, I began making calls and sending emails. By nightfall, I had gathered everything I needed. What I was planning wasn't revenge, it was justice. The kind of gift that would last far longer than anything on a registry. So, that Friday morning, I drove to Madison and Trevor's apartment. Their wedding present was neatly wrapped in silver paper with a white bow. Inside was a leather portfolio filled with documents I had spent 3 days preparing. Trevor was about to learn all about his new family connections. I left the package at their door with a short note. Congratulations on your marriage. Every new husband should know about his wife's family history. With love, Carol. Then I went home and waited. The call came at 2:17 p.m. Madison's number appeared on my phone, but it was Trevor's voice, furious and wild. "What the hell is wrong with you, you crazy old witch? How dare you send us this garbage?" I calmly set down my teacup. "Hello, Trevor. I take it you opened your wedding gift?" "This isn't funny. This is harassment. I'm calling the police." "I'm confused, dear," I said evenly. "What exactly would you report? That your mother-in-law gave you a wedding present filled with public records and newspaper articles?" In the background, I could hear Madison sobbing. "Trevor, calm down. Let me talk to her." "No! This woman is insane. She's trying to ruin our marriage before it even starts." I couldn't help the small smile tugging at my lips. "Trevor, surely you're not upset about me sharing a bit of family history. I assumed you'd be grateful to know the connections between our families." What I hadn't told him yet was the real discovery I'd made. While digging into his background, I uncovered something remarkable. His grandfather, William Morrison, had once been business partners with my late husband Robert back in 1987. They'd embarked on a shopping center development deal, but it collapsed in the worst possible way. The documents I placed inside the wedding gift told the entire story. How William had siphoned money from their joint accounts, how Robert had been left financially ruined and humiliated, how his first marriage crumbled under the strain, and how lawsuits nearly destroyed him. Morrison, meanwhile, fled to Florida with over $2 million. But the most explosive part wasn't the theft itself. It was what came years later. A newspaper article from 1993 revealed that William Morrison died in a car accident. Before his death, he supposedly confessed to his grandson Trevor about the stolen fortune, money hidden away in secret accounts. And Trevor had been quietly enjoying that inheritance for years. That was how he afforded the designer suits, the luxury lifestyle, the polished image he used to charm women like Madison, despite never holding a steady job. And legally, that money didn't belong to Trevor. It belonged to Robert's estate. Since Robert passed 3 years ago, his only heir, Madison, was the rightful owner. "Trevor," I said evenly into the phone, "I also included the contact information for the law firm that managed Robert's estate. They'd very much like to speak with you about those offshore accounts your grandfather mentioned. By their records, quite a lot of money belongs to Madison." The line went silent. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its fury and now carried a sharp edge of fear. "You're lying." "I never lie," I said softly. "I was a nurse for decades. We're trained to be exact. But don't take my word for it. Mr. Rodriguez, your grandfather's lawyer in Miami, still remembers the case. He's been assisting me with the documentation. In the background, I could hear Madison's frantic voice. What is she talking about? What money? Oh, and Trevor, I added calmly, the beach house keys are tucked inside the portfolio too. Consider them part of the wedding gift. I imagine the ocean air will make it easier for the two of you to reflect on your family history. Then I hung up, refilled my teacup, and waited. The evening promised to be very interesting. At 6:30, Madison's call came. Her voice was broken from tears, and behind her, Trevor's shouts echoed. Mom! What did you do? I sat on my porch, watching the sunset, feeling more at peace than I had in months. I gave you both a wedding present, sweetheart. Did you read it all? I read enough. Trevor says it's all lies, that you're trying to break us apart. And what do you think, Madison? A long pause stretched across the line. I think I need you to explain some things. Did Trevor's grandfather really steal from Dad? $2.3 million according to the records, I told her gently. Your father spent years trying to recover it, but William Morrison vanished. The stress broke him. It's part of why he left us when you were 8. He couldn't survive the ruin and endless lawsuits. Another pause. Madison's voice wavered. And Trevor knew about this money? From the background, I heard Trevor's muffled fury as he tried to grab the phone. The deathbed confession suggests he did, I said firmly. The investigator I hired found proof of Trevor accessing several of those accounts over the past 5 years. His so-called lifestyle was built on money that legally belonged to your father's estate. That's impossible, Madison whispered. Trevor has a consulting business. He told me he specializes in investment strategies for high-net-worth individuals. My chest ached for her. Madison, when was the last time you actually saw Trevor working? A client meeting, a phone call, even a signed contract? Silence. From the background came Trevor's furious voice, demanding she hang up on me. The law firm wants to meet with you, sweetheart, I continued softly. As Robert's heir, you're entitled to that money, with interest. They estimate it's nearly $4 million now. $4 million? Madison's whisper cracked like glass. Trevor married you 3 days after I hired the private investigator, I said. Doesn't that timing feel just a little too perfect? Trevor's voice suddenly rose loud enough for me to hear clearly. She's lying. She's bitter. She's jealous of our happiness. She wants to ruin us because she can't stand seeing you happy. Madison, I said gently, ask yourself this. If none of this were true, why is Trevor so frantic? If his grandfather was innocent, wouldn't he be eager to clear his name? Wouldn't he want to fight for your father's justice? The line went still, save for the sound of Madison's shaky breathing. There's something else, I pressed. The investigator uncovered 2 broken engagements before you, Emma Chen in 2019 and Sarah Walsh in 2021, both wealthy families. Both women cut off from loved ones before discovering Trevor's schemes. Stop, Madison whispered, her voice breaking. I even have their contact information if you want. I said stop. The line went dead. I set the phone down and stared out into the night. Tomorrow, she'd have to choose. Trevor's lies or the truth I had laid bare. Tomorrow, she would have to decide between the man who had cut her off from her family and the facts that could finally free her. But tonight, Trevor Morrison would go to bed knowing his empire of deception was collapsing around him. And for the first time in 2 years, I slept peacefully, knowing Madison now had everything she needed to see clearly. The gift that keeps on giving, indeed. She didn't call that night or the next. But on Sunday morning, I opened my door to find her curled on my porch steps, same clothes as Friday, hair unkempt, eyes swollen from tears, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Tell me everything, she said, skipping a greeting. I brewed coffee, and we sat down at my kitchen table. the table where she once scribbled out homework, where we planned her college essays, where countless mother-daughter talks had unfolded. And now, it would bear the weight of betrayal. "Trevor left yesterday," Madison admitted, staring into her mug. "He packed 2 bags and said he needed space. He told me you were destroying our marriage with lies. That if I trusted you more than him, then maybe we weren't meant to be together." Classic manipulation. Make the victim believe they hold responsibility for the collapse. "Do you know where he went?" I asked. She shook her head. "He shut his phone off. But Mom..." Her eyes filled again. "I found something." From her purse, she pulled out a manila folder and spread its contents across the table. Pages of printed emails between Trevor and a man named Marcus Webb. They detailed the Morrison inheritance and the offshore accounts. The correspondence stretched back 2 years, long before Trevor had even met Madison. "There's more," she said, her voice steadier now. "I called Emma Chen yesterday, the woman from your investigator's report." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did she tell you?" Madison's lips trembled, but her words were clear. "Everything. How Trevor isolated her from her family, convinced her to put him on her bank accounts, even had her write a will, leaving everything to him. Her father hired a detective and discovered Trevor's pattern. When they confronted him, he disappeared overnight." Madison unlocked her phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a string of messages. "Emma connected me with Sarah Walsh, too," she said quietly. "Same exact story, Mom. He targets women with money, wins their trust, cuts them off from their families, and then makes his move on their finances." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." She shook her head. "Don't apologize. You tried to warn me. I chose not to listen. I put my faith in a man I'd known for 2 years over the woman who raised me my whole life." Tears welled in her eyes, but there was fire too. "Emma told me something else. She said Trevor actually researched us before that so-called chance meeting. He knew about the beach house, about Dad's money troubles, even about you being a widow. The coffee shop spill wasn't fate. It was staged." Madison had always believed she'd literally bumped into Trevor by chance, spilling her drink on his expensive shirt. Now she knew it had been part of his calculated plan. "What are you going to do?" I asked. She looked at me with the same fierce determination I'd last seen when she was 12, standing up to a bully on the playground. "I'm going to destroy him," she said simply. "But I'll need your help." For the first time in 2 long years, my daughter turned to me instead of away. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled with real pride. "Tell me what you need." The plan we formed was elegant in its simplicity. Trevor would eventually come back. Men like him always did once they thought the danger had passed. He'd apologize, promise change, maybe even claim he'd been confused or under stress. He'd try to smooth things over and resume his scheme, but this time when he returned, we'd be waiting. On Monday, Madison called Robert's estate lawyer, Patricia Winters. The news she gave us was better than I had dared hope. Not only did Madison have a legitimate claim to the money Trevor's grandfather had stolen, but Trevor himself had left a trail. Because he knowingly accessed those accounts, he could be prosecuted for money laundering and conspiracy. "The original theft is beyond the statute of limitations," Patricia explained, "but Trevor's recent use of the funds restarts the legal clock. He's been living off stolen money." Patricia then connected Madison with a federal investigator, Agent Jennifer Liu, who had already been following Trevor's activities. Emma's and Sarah's families had filed complaints, and the FBI had been quietly compiling evidence. "We've been waiting for the final piece," Agent Liu told us on a conference call. "Your cooperation could bring the entire case together. If you're willing, we can run a controlled operation." Madison didn't hesitate. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She wanted justice for Emma, for Sarah, and for any other woman Trevor had deceived. By Wednesday afternoon, Trevor's inevitable text arrived. "Can we talk? I miss you. I want to come home." Madison held up her phone. "Should I answer?" Tell him you miss him too, I advised calmly. Say you regret doubting him, that I was just jealous and trying to cause problems. Her jaw tightened with anger as she typed, but her message was worded with perfect sweetness, crafted to stroke Trevor's ego. Within minutes, he replied he'd be home Friday evening, ready to start over. The next morning, Agent Lou laid out the operation. We'll have surveillance on the apartment. Madison, you'll wear a wire. There will be agents positioned nearby. All you have to do is get him to acknowledge that he knew about the stolen funds and that he married you to gain access to your inheritance. What if he doesn't admit it? Madison asked nervously. Then we still have enough financial evidence to take him down, Agent Lou assured her. But a recorded confession would make the case ironclad, and it would strengthen charges for his other victims as well. By Friday evening, my nerves were buzzing. I sat in my living room with a book open on my lap, pretending to read but unable to focus. My phone never left the table. Agent Lou had given me a special number in case Madison needed me, though she promised the apartment was fully secured. At 7:43 p.m., Madison's text arrived. He's here. At 8:15 p.m., another. He brought flowers and wine, playing the perfect husband. At 8:52 p.m., talking about planning a honeymoon, asking about my savings account for deposits. And then, at 9:31 p.m., the message that made me exhale for the first time in hours. Got him to admit he knew about the offshore accounts. FBI moving in now. I set down my phone and poured myself a glass of wine. Trevor Morrison's carefully constructed career of manipulation was over. Still, I had the feeling the best part was yet to come. By Monday morning, the headlines confirmed it. Local man arrested in multi-state financial fraud scheme. The Portland Press-Herald splashed his mugshot across the front page. They didn't use Madison's name, only describing her as the most recent victim. But Trevor's photo said it all. Gone was the polished charmer. All that remained was a criminal whose mask had finally slipped. Madison came over that afternoon carrying Chinese takeout. She looked lighter than I had seen her in years. Agent Lou called this morning, she said while setting out the cartons. Trevor's been formally charged with conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud in multiple states. Bail is $500,000. I nearly choked on my tea. $500,000? Apparently, he's considered a flight risk. Between the offshore accounts and his history of vanishing whenever someone confronts him, his assets are frozen and his parents can't cover bail. We ate quietly for a few minutes, savoring the rare peace. Then Madison set down her chopsticks. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. I put mine down too. What is it, sweetheart? How long did you know? About Trevor's pattern? What he was really after? I thought about sparing her, but she deserved honesty. I suspected early on, but I didn't have proof until 3 months ago. That's when I hired the investigator. Her eyes widened. 3 months ago? That was right after I told you about Trevor's boundaries talk. Yes, I said softly. And you didn't warn me directly because you knew I wouldn't believe you. I met her gaze. Would you have? She lowered her head. No, I would have thought you were jealous or meddling. He had me so convinced that you were the problem. She stirred her noodles silently, then asked, How did you know to check into his grandfather's past? I recognized the name Morrison in your father's old files, I explained, and once I made that connection, I knew there had to be more buried there. For a long moment, Madison said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. I was awful to you, Mom. I cut you out of my wedding. I let him convince me that was healthy. I chose a man I barely knew over the woman who raised me alone. I don't know how you can even look at me. Madison, no, let me finish. I believed his twisted version of family instead of trusting mine. I'm so ashamed. I reached across the table and clasped her hand. You were manipulated by a professional con artist. That's not your fault. But I should have seen it. I'm not naive. I'm smart, educated, successful. How could I fall for him? Because that's exactly why he chose you, I said gently. Predators don't go after people with nothing. They go after strong, independent people with something worth taking, and then they twist that strength until you believe it's weakness. That's what predators do, sweetheart. They don't target weak people. They target people who have something they want. Madison gripped my hand. How do I fix this between us? You already have, I told her softly. You're here. You're safe. You're free. That's all I ever wanted. We finished our lunch and later spread old photo albums across the table. Madison pointed at sun-bleached snapshots from summers at the beach house, asking me to retell stories she had half forgotten. It felt like we were laying fresh bricks over a broken wall, rebuilding our bond piece by piece. That evening, as she stood by the door to leave, she turned back. Mom, there's going to be a civil trial. Agent Lou says Trevor's other victims are filing a class action suit to recover their losses. They want me to join. Are you going to? I asked. Her smile answered before her words did. It was the same fierce, unshakable smile I remembered from her childhood. Absolutely. I'm going to make sure Trevor Morrison never gets the chance to hurt another woman again. That's my girl, I thought. Welcome back. The trial began 6 weeks later, and it brought everything I had prayed for. Patricia Winters had been right. Madison was entitled to nearly $4 million in recovered assets, plus interest and damages. But even more important than the money was the way the prosecution dismantled Trevor's facade, piece by piece, until his entire scheme lay exposed. Emma Chen flew in from Seattle to testify, poised and confident in a Navy suit. Sarah Walsh came from New York, nervous but brave, determined to have her voice heard. Together with Madison, they revealed a portrait of a serial predator who had perfected his tactics over years. From the gallery, I watched my daughter speak with strength and composure. She described the isolation, the manipulation, the way Trevor had made her doubt herself and sever ties with her family. She didn't cry, she didn't falter, she let the facts stand tall. Trevor's lawyer tried to paint him as a young man who'd simply lost his way. But that argument collapsed when Agent Lou introduced evidence of Trevor's meticulous research into each woman. Dossiers, timelines, even surveillance photos of Madison taken weeks before their so-called accidental coffee shop meeting. But the most devastating blow came from a witness no one expected. On the third day, the prosecution called Marcus Webb, the man whose emails with Trevor had first revealed the offshore accounts. Arrested as an accomplice, Webb had agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. Mr. Morrison contacted me in 2018, Webb testified, asking for help moving money his grandfather had hidden. When I explained the legal barriers, he said he had a long-term plan to make it legitimate. What plan? The prosecutor pressed. He said he intended to marry someone with a legal claim to the funds. He showed me articles about Robert Thompson's financial collapse and said Robert's heir would eventually inherit those claims. He told me once he gained access to that heir's finances through marriage, he could claim the offshore money as community property. The courtroom shifted, every eye on Madison as Webb confirmed what we already suspected. Did Mr. Morrison identify any potential targets? The prosecutor asked. Yes, he showed me 3 women's profiles, each with wealthy or influential families. He explained why each would be vulnerable. And was one of them Madison Thompson? Yes, Webb said. He called her the perfect target, successful but emotionally isolated after her father's abandonment, close to a mother who owned valuable property, inexperienced in relationships. He said she'd be easy to win over. I watched Madison's face as she heard herself described as a target, a mark to be exploited. The pain in her eyes was terrible, but beneath it I saw something else. Rage. Pure, focused rage at the man who had dissected her vulnerabilities the way a predator stalks prey. Trevor's attorney kept raising objections, desperate to salvage what little ground he had left, but it was useless. The damage was done. The jury now saw Trevor for what he was, not just a thief dipping into stolen money, but a calculating manipulator who had built an entire plan around marrying Madison to gain legal access to her family's assets. When Marcus Webb stepped down from the stand, Trevor looked diminished. The arrogance and polish that once cloaked him were gone. He slouched in his chair, nothing more than a frightened criminal hiding behind an expensive suit. The jury didn't take long, less than 3 hours. "Guilty on all counts." The words rang through the courtroom like a bell, shattering the illusion Trevor had spent years constructing. Conspiracy, money laundering, fraud, and, thanks to Webb's testimony, an additional charge, criminal marriage fraud with intent to commit grand larceny. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison, plus restitution of more than $8 million to his victims. With most of the money already squandered, Trevor would leave prison just as broken as those he had targeted. At sentencing, Madison delivered a victim impact statement that silenced the room. Her voice trembled at first, but her gaze never wavered as she looked straight at Trevor, shackled at the defense table. "Trevor Morrison didn't just steal money from me," she began. "He stole 2 years of my life. He stole my trust in myself, my relationship with my mother, and my faith in love. He convinced me that the people who truly loved me were the enemy, all while plotting to strip me of everything I had." She paused, steadied herself, and continued with steel in her tone. "But here's what Trevor never understood about the women he preyed upon. We are not weak. We are not victims waiting to be broken. We are intelligent, resilient women who were deceived for a time by a master manipulator. And when we discovered the truth, we didn't just walk away. We fought back, together." Trevor didn't lift his head during her statement, but when Madison ended with, "I hope every day of your sentence reminds you of the lives you tried to destroy, and of the women strong enough to rebuild them," I saw his shoulders tremble. Outside the courthouse afterward, the 5 of us stood together: Madison, Emma, Sarah, Agent Lou, and me. Reporters shouted for comments, but we refused. This wasn't about headlines or revenge, it was about closing a chapter. Emma embraced Madison. "Thank you for wearing that wire. Without it, we may never have secured a conviction." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on her. If you hadn't dug into Trevor's past, he'd still be out there hunting for another victim." Agent Lou handed each of us her card. "You helped us put away a predator who could have harmed countless more. The Bureau is grateful, but you should be proud of yourselves. This took real courage." As the crowd thinned, Madison and I walked side by side toward our cars. She broke the silence first. "Mom, I want to ask you something." "Anything, sweetheart." She smiled, the radiant, unguarded smile I hadn't seen in 2 years. "Would you help me plan a real wedding someday? With someone who deserves me, someone who loves you, too. Because if a man can't value my mother, then he's not worthy of me." Tears burned my eyes. "I would be honored." "And Mom," she added softly, "about the beach house. I know Trevor made me say those awful things, that it wasn't elegant enough. But the truth? I've always dreamed of getting married there, barefoot in the sand, fairy lights between the dunes, just like I used to imagine when I was a little girl." "It would be perfect," I whispered, hugging her tightly. As we drove away from the courthouse, I thought about the woman I had raised. Madison had been temporarily lost, deceived by a master manipulator who had targeted her kindness and turned it against her. But in the end, the fire I had seen in her since childhood returned. Madison rediscovered her own strength, and in doing so, she found her way back to me. Trevor Morrison's greatest mistake was believing that cutting Madison off from her family would make her weak and dependent. Instead, it only forged a stronger bond between us and fueled a determination he never anticipated. The predator had become the hunted, and justice was delivered by the very women he once believed he could exploit. Some wedding gifts last far longer than crystal glasses or fine china. The truth, once revealed, cannot be hidden again, and in this case, it was the gift that ended his game forever. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.